Welcome back to Gumball Love. I'm your host, Melissa Ledger. Thank you for joining another episode of Gumball Love. So today I'm going to talk to you about expectations. Oh my goodness. Expectations we have of people and why we feel like we're constantly let down. So today is Sunday and I just painted my first picture. Just to give you a little life up. I always jump right in because I have all these thoughts in my head. Forget to share with you that I am a real person with a real life. But if you're following me on Instagram or Snapchat, you can see that I'm taking you guys on a little bit of an adventure of just exploring other interests. And I work a full-time job. I do this as my good friend Elaine calls a side hustle, which is really my passion and the reason I feel like I was placed on this earth. And in a previous podcast, I talked about how I just gave up on online dating because it was such a low vibe thing to be doing. And I made the mistake of doing 3 dating sites at one time. And it was just super depressing. And it just became so, it was like I was working and then I was doing this online dating stuff. And it just kind of took me out of sync a little bit. It was just like something that was really changing my vibrational frequency. Not to get all woo-woo on you, but really I feel like if we are listening to the right music and we are totally in sync with our jobs and we're doing healthy things and we're going to the gym and we're drinking water and eating healthy food and all that stuff, we just feel differently. And all of that interaction with online dating was affecting that. So I've been talking to a lot of you and some of you are still doing online dating. By all means, you could definitely meet the right person online. People do it every single day. This is just a choice that I made because I felt like I wasn't out and about pursuing my interests enough. I'm obsessed with ballroom dancing. I do it 3 times a week, but it's really kind of become like a sport to me where my community, my dance family, I see the same people over and over again. So I really needed to continue to diversify. I'm coming up on my 1-year anniversary next month when I first started dancing. And so I just started thinking about things that I'm interested in, and art was one of them. I've talked about it before. So I did my second trip to the Met, decided to become a member, and just tackling the Impressionist artists in the European paintings and really focusing on Monet and just studying it for a little bit. And I just kind of went on this whole journey of just studying Monet. And then I actually had paints from years ago that I hadn't even brought out of boxes since I moved to New York. So I took them out today and painted my first picture, which isn't that bad. I mean, I feel like if you're not really an artist, then if you paint something and people can say like, oh, I see that is a sky and those are mountains and those are flowers, then I feel like it's good because I'm really not doing it for any other reason, just to get into the feeling of paintbrushes on the canvas and starting playing music, or actually listen to a YouTube video of just instructions of how to do it. There's so much free information online. So just a great way to spend the Sunday. Cleaned out my fish tank, which I hate doing, but it's got to be done. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you. And also I've been chatting with clients and I went through a lot of this, in my whole process of having high expectations for people that I really shouldn't have. And what I mean by that is when you go to therapy and you really analyze your parents, your siblings, all the people that are in your life, everybody, friends, family, it doesn't matter. What I started to realize is that when we talk about like fairy tale expectations of relationships, I think sometimes we have sort of those same types of expectations from our parents. We have expectations from like what an aunt and uncle should do, what a holiday should look like. I mean, think about the holidays, how we create this expectation. There's such a high standard that everything's got to be perfect, and the decorations and the lights and the tree and the this and the that and the gifts, and there's such a pressure. And a lot of times the actual holiday is a letdown. Same with New Year's Eve, right? It's like you get dressed up and then it always just seems like New Year's Eve is jacked up somehow. It's never really what you thought it was going to be. I mean, it kind of falls flat a lot of times. And then we feel let down in the moment. And it's because we've built up our expectations so high that we do feel let down. And so what I want you to think about is when you're out there dating, for what we'll take dating relationships, I think that we have romantic expectations that when we go on like date 2 or 3 and we figure out he's not the right guy, there tends to be such a huge letdown, like because we build up in our minds that this could be the one, oh my God. And then it's like, not. And you're like, there's just this like this balloon deflating feeling. And I was just thinking as I was doing my painting today and cleaning out the fish tank, the glamorous life, I was just thinking about how much I have learned to adjust expectations with all people in my life. And when I am getting too stressed out about a situation or an upcoming event, I realize that I'm putting too high of expectations on that event of how I want it to be. I start imagining fights that probably will never happen, or what if they say this, or what if they say that, or what if this happens, because you imagine it to be something and then it ends up not being something. And so I think that we do this a lot with our parents, especially. Like if you have an estranged relationship with a parent, I was helping a kid that I've worked with for a long time, and his dad has had a really difficult past and is not the greatest person. Is actually not a great person at all. And sometimes he really shows up and he's really great. And that creates this illusion that it kind of temporarily sets a new standard. But then the next week, a similar event can happen, and then he doesn't show up, or he ignores him, or he makes fun of it. And when that new expectation was set high, and all of a sudden he experiences something else, it feels like, I thought you cared and now you don't care. And so when that expectation is high, we tend to get our heart broken over and over again, because we think, we could have the fairy tale expectation of what we think a father should be, or an uncle should be, or a teacher, or a boss, or whatever we're idealizing in a relationship. If we set that too high and then that person falls short, then we get our heart broken, or we get our feelings hurt over and over again. So whenever I think about expectations, I always think of capacity. I shouldn't say I always think of this. This is when I know when I'm not thinking about this is when I'm getting stressed out about somebody that I wish was more. I wish that I could have a better relationship. I wish that they weren't the way they were. But I will tell you a huge therapy hack that I learned. And I really want you to think about this in relationships where you may have higher expectations than you should. And I remember my therapist telling me, whoever we were talking about, he would say, who are their parents? And then I'd think, well, their mom was this and their dad was this. Okay, so based on what they received as a child and in their upbringing, what do you feel like you can expect from them? What is their capacity to give? What is their capacity to love? Where would they have learned to give what you are asking for? And it was like, dun, dun, dun. Oh, they wouldn't have learned it. How can I expect that? And sometimes, as I started really working on the concept of gumball love and how people are attention focused versus connection focused and building a true bond of love, I started to realize that when I thought that they were showing their capacity to love, they were actually high on attention, or they were high on really happy. I caught them at a really great moment. Like if you're talking, sometimes the gumball people that love attention and they feed off of attention all the time, if you hang out with them when they've had a major success that day, something really great happened, they can be the most friendly, available, attentive, loving, adoring, encouraging people you've ever met. Like they really show that it seems like they really have that in them. And I'm not going to say that they don't. But another thing that I realized is that we have to just enjoy the time or the times that they're showing up as their best self. or a great version or in a really great mood. But when we enjoy it, we just soak it in and say, gosh, they're having a great day. I love when they're like this. This is awesome. And I'm really talking about people that you have in your life that you can't cut them out of your life. They're family, or they're just somebody that you can't remove. Instead of saying like, see, this is what he can be like when he wants to. Because then we assume that when he's not like that or she's not like that, he doesn't want to. So when we don't see the behavior that we expect, we feel rejected. We feel like we're being dismissed. Instead, we need to think of it as their capacity is limited. I've caught them on a great day. I'm going to enjoy their best self, but I'm going to not raise my expectation. I'm going to keep it exactly where I know it is on the worst day. And if they exceed expectations once in a while, that's great. But tomorrow I'm hitting the reset button and you're going back to where I expect you to be. That way you stay calm and you are very present while you enjoy their best self. And it's a little bit sad because when you become aware of this, you're not riding the high with them. I used to ride the high with them a lot of times, be like, oh my gosh, this is so great. I've always wanted to connect with you like this. And I would just start pouring my heart out. Like I always just wondered before and blah, blah, blah. And it just, no, you just got to leave it. This is who they are today. It's great. Love it. But I can't expect it every time. If you can share this with children, especially that have inconsistent parents, that sometimes show up to their games or events and sometimes they don't. It's really heartbreaking because they think that the love is coming and going. And if they could understand expectations and capacity, then they wouldn't feel that pain of rejection so strongly. It still hurts when you're rejected. However, if you know that that person is giving the best that they can with what they were given, then you start to see their love for you a little bit differently, especially a family member. Like when they do something and it's like, it's not the way you would love. It's not the gift you would give. It's not what you would say. It's not how you would show up. However, it's their best. When you really start looking at this and going, that's their best. And they gave their best for me. And I have to be happy with that because I can't expect my level because they didn't have my parents. They didn't get what I have. They don't have the capacity that I do. So I can't expect I can't expect from them what I expect from myself. Does that make sense? So I just wanted to share that quick message with you because it's something I needed to be reminded of today. And it was just like, it's almost like a reset button for ourselves. Like, okay, wait a minute. I'm getting my feelings hurt. I'm feeling like they're not giving enough. I'm feeling rejected. Why am I feeling this way? Does this person normally give this to me consistently? And if they don't, just because there's a certain day on a calendar doesn't mean that that capacity is going to just magically be there because of a holiday or you come into town or they come visit you or whatever the circumstances might be. We have to just keep remembering where they are. And as you continue to grow, you're going to notice that I think sometimes we can increase our capacity if we become self-aware and we continue to grow. And when other people aren't doing that, then that gap between you gets bigger. And sometimes when you don't see that person for a long time, you feel like they've changed dramatically. And sometimes it's just you've grown dramatically. And so when it comes to dating and relationships too, like we talk a lot in the online or in the private Facebook group about all these dynamics of these guys in online dating sites. And we go on the site and I did too. I expected better. I expected more, and I shouldn't have. Now, if I were to go back on, I would expect 95% trolls and maybe an occasional decent guy. So with that expectation, I wouldn't have been so, like, it just had been a couple of years since I'd been online, and it felt like I was getting hit in the face with, I don't know, like, it just felt like not really gut punches, but I just felt grossed out because of the way these guys would communicate. I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting more decency. And so when I didn't get what I expected, I really felt grossed out. I got discouraged. It was like, this is disgusting. So if I were to go back and do it, I wouldn't have those expectations as high. And the guys that exceeded my expectations, then they would become the exception, expectations, same word almost. So do you hear what I'm trying to say? Like, I think that once we adjust and we start looking at people for what their capacity is, then the whole world changes. And I'll tell you too, like, then you start seeing who has big capacity. And those are the people that you have the deep talks with. Those are the people that you can share your goals and your dreams and your ideas. Those are the people that really will get you, and you'll be able to grow because they're also on that same journey. And the people with limited capacity, if we put them on like a scale of 1 to 10, and for somebody else, I might be a 4. So I'm not putting myself on like super, I don't know. Like I have a lot of room to grow. So I'm just saying, like, I know where I am. I know where I have expected other people to be, and I know I have room to grow. But let's say like you feel like you have high capacity and, you know, you rank yourself an 8, let's say, or a 9, and you're around someone who has like a capacity level of a 2 or a 3. Then I used to make the mistake of, I used to never think about capacity. So I would be sharing really deep things with people that can't handle that stuff. And then I would get weird looks. I would get people that weren't paying attention. They would talk over me, and I didn't understand what was going on. It was like, I'm sharing this. Isn't this interesting? You don't like me? You don't think I'm in? You know, I would feel rejected. And then once I started to understand capacity, and then I started to adjust how I communicated with those people, everything changed. So if I come in contact with a 2 or a 3, I just talk about the weather. Very easy things like, you know, flowers and trees. It depends on who it is. But, you know, I live in a building where there's a ton of elderly people, and they have very limited capacity. There are crotchety old New Yorkers, and they just want to bitch about stuff. And so I usually try to say absolutely nothing. But then if they do engage in conversation, it's like New Yorkers are famous for talking about the weather, and that's it. It will just be the weather or something. If I have my dog with me, it's about the dog. I keep it light. If they start complaining about something in the building and they want to gossip, I just kind of ride the elevator. Okay, well, hey, have a great day. And I'm very polite, but I've learned not to. I used to be much more of a people pleaser. Living in New York has cured me of a lot of that. I'm like a pro at getting out of a conversation or changing the subject or pretending. Like, I've done so many pretend phone calls, you can't even believe it. There are people that are like literally death traps out of my building. I'll be like, I walk out and I look to see, okay, who's standing outside, because it's summertime now. So, you know, people can just hang out, and they're just hanging out waiting to latch onto somebody and just complain. And I just want to go, you live in New York, like you live in Manhattan. Do you realize? I actually said that to someone once. I'm like, you know, people dream about living exactly where you are. And there are buses that ride up and down our street all day long, just looking at where we live. Isn't that cool? And they just stared at me because they're complaining about like the gardening and you know, whatever. It's just like what flowers didn't get planted. I was, oh my gosh, you live in New York. Like, you should be happy. So those are the people that I just now give almost zero time. every time I walk through, I realize, wow, I used to talk to that person. I used to talk to that person. And they just maybe think I turned into a huge snob. But since I've lived here of the past going on 5 years, I've really worked on myself to limit how I speak to people, limit how much I invest my energy, because their energy comes off on me, because I'm usually interacting with people in Gumball Love in my full-time job, or I'm dancing, and dancers are all so positive. You've got fun music on. We never talk about anything controversial at the studio. It's so funny how almost it never comes up, because when you're so full of joy, you're talking about music that you love and movies and, you know, your family, your friends. It's so upbeat and such a positive environment and positive life. And so as you create your own designed life and you start to create dimension, then the lower frequency, low capacity people will become much more obvious to you. But it's really difficult when those are people you have close relationships with. And you want, if you're listening to this podcast and you follow me, I think we are mostly women, guys too, some guys, that we want those close relationships. We crave that bond that we want to have with a significant other. We cherish our friendships. We love our girlfriends. We love that those intimate talks that we can have. We love to connect and we love to bond. And sometimes we really want that from a family member, a cousin, an aunt, or uncle, sister, mom, dad, whatever. And when we can't get that, or we're teased with these great interactions that happen once in a while, we start to really get discouraged and we feel so rejected by those. So I just wanted to share this message with you that thinking about, just remember, what is the capacity? What am I expecting? First, you got to go, okay, what am I expecting out of this situation? It's a really good question, especially like if you're going into a holiday. Let's say, what's the next holiday? Like, what is it, Halloween? Or actually Labor Day weekend is coming up. So let's say you have like a Labor Day weekend family event and it's like a barbecue, or you're going to go out on the lake or whatever. You're on the beach and there's this expectation or feeling that things should go a certain way. So stop and ask yourself, what do I expect from this day? What am I worried about happening? What do I think might happen? And am I expecting too much? Am I glamorizing the event? Or are you expecting things to go bad? Because sometimes you think it's going to go bad, and then you think about how many times has that happened really? And then you're like, hardly ever. So we have to sort of shift our mindset and go, yeah, if so-and-so brings something up, like sometimes we prep ourselves. Like if somebody brings this up or they talk about this, I'm going to handle it this way. I'm so good at this. Like if this person says this, and I'm going to be like, blah, 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 blah. And if they say that, it's like fake conversation, CEO. Like it's like, stop rehearsing conversations that may never happen. But we tend to get on the defensive sometimes when we feel like we're coming into contact with people that we normally don't, or we know have limited capacity. And limited capacity also means they can be jealous. They don't have self-respect. And that's a huge thing. People that have limited capacity to give, and they have, there's another word I'm trying to think of, but if they have limited capacity and you're, now I just lost my train of thought. Oh, they have limited capacity and they're closed-minded. They can tend to say things that are judgmental, rude, passive-aggressive. So sometimes you have to think about it and say, okay, how would I feel about myself if I really just go off on that person? Is it going to solve anything? Is it going to help anything? What's really the outcome? Because if I just rip into somebody that has almost zero capacity, and then I'm literally talking to them, expecting them to understand like I do at my level, which they don't. So if you live, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're this low person and you're this high person, but it could just mean that you live extremely different lives. and you have exposure to totally different areas or totally different things. And so you're really not synced up. So to have an argument with somebody, it's just like, it's pointless because you're not going to benefit anything from it. So sometimes you just got to go in and say, okay, I plan to smile. I can get up and walk away from that situation. I give myself permission to leave that event early. If that happens, I'm going to take a minute. I'm going to call somebody before I freak out. Because if you're like me, I think I said this in the last episode, where I can think of exactly what to say in the moment and just do a Julia Sugarbaker. If you don't know, Designing Women from the 80s, she used to be able to go off on people with these tangents, and she would like literally not take a breath, and it was perfectly okay. I'm no Julia Sugarbaker, but I can have my moments. And so, and I can get emotional, and sometimes if it's the right family member, they can really push your buttons. They know you. They know it ticks you off, and so they will go there. So whatever you have to do to prep for those types of situations, but then do it. But I just want you to approach it with, okay, where is this person coming from? What is their capacity? What is my expectation? And how do I need to adjust that? And even if they come at you and they're really immature, they're really jealous, or they go there, they say something like they make fun of your job, or if you're not working or you're living at home or whatever, if they pick on you and they try to poke the bear, you just got to rise above and lower your expectation. I know, right? It's like a podcast about lowering your expectations for people that can't reach the capacity. But it's true. It's just, we all have. There are people that I don't have the capacity to give at their level. I follow one on Facebook. She takes care of wildlife animals, and she tube feeds squirrels and possums, and I don't even know how this woman sleeps. Like, I don't have that kind of capacity. I would literally be like, I can't tube feed squirrels anymore. Don't bring me another possum. Like, I can't do it. I don't have her bandwidth. Oh, that's another, I love that word, the bandwidth. So whether we're dating guys, and this is really, I know what I was going to say too. Like, we're dating guys and we're getting really irritated, but it's sort of dumb because all we're doing is applying our level of capacity to theirs and expecting that, and then getting irritated when we don't get it. And if we just said, oh, okay, he doesn't have the capacity, so it'll never be there. And it becomes so much easier to just walk away. You're like, oh, no capacity, bye. And a lot of you, especially private Facebook group, we're getting really good at this. We're just filter. Like, we see it fast. And it's like, oh, done, gumball guy. This is these stupid conversations. Like, aren't we just getting all of you guys in the private Facebook group, we're getting so good at this. You're not going to have a the guy that's like, so what are you wearing? What are you doing tonight? You up, babe? Hey, sexy. What's up, babe? These guys, you never even met them before. This isn't how good guys communicate. This isn't how like respectable men that are going to work and calling their mothers and, showing up in life and respecting themselves. This isn't about respecting women. Guys that respect women respect themselves first. So don't get offended by their lack of respect for you, because I want you to think, oh, you don't respect yourself, because you can talk that way and hear yourself and you're okay with it. How do you live with it, buddy? That's kind of how I think now. Like, you can say whatever you want to me, but my first thought is, wow, you're okay with yourself doing that? That's too bad. Like, what if your mom saw your text? Like, did she raise you that way? Gross. So if we just change our perspective a little bit and go, yeah, I had higher expectations, but now I don't. Or we kind of we get initial impressions like, oh, he has this kind of job and he presents himself a certain way, and then he sends the, what are you wearing text? And you're like, oh, immediately the expectation lowers. And so when that happens, your immediate thought, I want you to go, oh, I expected more. I'm getting less. Limited capacity. No bandwidth. Can't go anywhere here. So you got to go. Same thing with family. They say something stupid and you just go, no bandwidth. if you have even like, I have racist family members, and I just get so irritated. And then I just think there's no exposure to diversity here. So I can't expect them to have the capacity that I do because they don't know anybody that doesn't look like them. So I can get mad and cause a huge fight, or I can just sit there and go, no bandwidth. I can't give them the experience of cultures in a conversation. I can't give them the relationships and the experiences that I've had over my life in an instant. So I can use my energy to freak out, or I can just ignore it and not acknowledge it. Because I think that's super powerful, especially when somebody's being racist and you really know them. If they just make like a really gross comment and you give it nothing, they're like, oh. And you don't put them down either. You just it's like you're like Teflon. You had zero reaction and then you change the subject. Sometimes I think that's like the most powerful with anything inappropriate. But you know what I'm saying? Like, we have to be careful of not getting our feelings so hurt or feeling so rejected, because a lot of times when it comes to relationships and love, like we want the love, right? We want that bond. We want that relationship. We want it so bad that sometimes it's not the expectation. It's out of desperation. We're so desperate for it. And then it feels, when we don't get it, it almost feels like it gets taken away. And it's painful. However, on the flip side, when we really recognize who gives us that high band or wide bandwidth, when somebody has a lot of bandwidth, huge capacity, it's like once you start really kind of separating those people in your mind and you know you're in front of a huge capacity person, it's like making me smile right now. You start thinking of those people and they're so cool and they're so amazing and they have so much to give. And they just come with such an energy and it just flows out of them because their frequency is high, their energy is high, they're givers. They're the kind of people that you're like, whoa, you compliment them on something, they just give it to you. And you're like, oh my God, what do you, because they're full. They have enough. It's overflowing. And we need to take time to appreciate those people and tell them, be like, you know what? I just think you're awesome. And people like you are rare. And let them know. And then that also feels good, and that increases our capacity, because if we want to increase, we give, right? When we start taking or we start thinking of ourselves all the time, that's when we shrink. And that's when we start to decrease our bandwidth and limit our capacity. I think I've said bandwidth, capacity, and expectations like 1,000,000 times this episode. But I should have looked up in the thesaurus for other words other than bandwidth, expectation, and capacity. But I think you understand. So I wanted to just give you those quick thoughts before the end of the weekend. I'll get this posted right away. So you guys now you have 2 episodes from the weekend to listen to this week. And let me know other topics that you want me to talk about or questions that you have. I love hearing from you, and you are my motivation. You are my purpose. I'm so passionate about all of this because my entire goal and the legacy I want to leave is that you learn to love yourself. You learn who can love you the way that they should, that you can separate those in your mind so you don't feel rejected. Ultimately, I want to take the pain out of your life. I want you to be able to see the red flags, but also build yourself up and love yourself. So it's like fall in love with yourself and realize who has the capacity to love you. And I believe that's almost like a 2-track journey where I'm looking and evaluating other people, but I'm also looking at myself and I'm working on the relationship I have with myself. And in that process, those two, it's almost like 2 roads headed toward each other. And I don't know that we ever fully realize, I don't think we're never going to get to perfection, but I think that the journey is amazing, and creating a community around that journey is the whole purpose of this. And sometimes it's ugly, sometimes it's painful, and it's not perfect. But my whole purpose in doing this is to shorten the confusing part of it as much as I can. And so as you experience it, it might still sting, but it'll sting for a less amount of time. You'll get it figured out quicker. You won't take the blame on yourself. Just in the last podcast, when I was talking about my other client, I wanted to make sure that when the guy said, I can't be with you anymore, I'm not what you need, I wanted to make sure that she didn't assume it was all her. And we talked through it, and I did the podcast because I know so many people are going through the same thing. So many of you already wrote me after that podcast and was like, oh my gosh, I needed this. I'm going through this. So we have to make sure that we go, okay, we always want to look at ourselves. What could I have done differently? How could I have changed this relationship? We look at ourselves, but when the relationship ends, we have to make sure we don't fully blame ourselves or think, oh, he walked away from me because I'm not enough, or I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm too fat, or I'm this. Like, that's the road I don't want you to go down, because that's lies. That's not true. And it's so important that you are able to look at that with a clear mindset, so you don't allow yourself to go down that rabbit hole, and because it just takes too much time, and you don't want to, you're really just believing lies and wasting precious and valuable time. So no relationship is perfect. If you go through a breakup, it's like beautiful celebrities that have all of the beauty products and hair glam squads at their disposal still go through breakups. So no matter how skinny, how pretty, how successful, how famous, whatever, everybody has relationship issues. Everyone goes through these things. We are not alone. So I think just saying this stuff out loud, getting the process out in the open, understanding that everybody has a different level of capacity. And when they don't reach our expectations, it does not mean they are rejecting us. It does not mean that they're saying, I could give more, but with you, I'm just going to give less, because you know what I mean? That's not how it works. It's like they're doing what they know to be their best. They're doing, and sometimes some people's best in our eyes sucks. It's like, wow, that's your best, but that means you're just connecting with the wrong person. So people are where they are, and we have to love them where they are. That's a tough one. Loving people where they are and allowing them to walk out their own journey. And this is where we get a lot of times with guys, where we can see the issue and we could fix it so easily, but they aren't there and they can't see it. They've got to walk it out. And maybe down the road, they might get to a point where you can meet back up again. Stranger things have happened. But I want you to just keep a clear mind and make sure you're talking to your therapist and making sure you're connecting with reality. Because a lot of times, what did I just hear? Oh, it was in the movie Under the Tuscan Sun. Love that movie. I love Diane Lane. She's like the most adorable person ever. She's like, what is it about love that makes us so dumb? We just do dumb stuff when we feel like we love somebody. And, that's part of the whole thing. And then we know we're dumb, and then we feel even more dumb because we know we're doing dumb stuff. It's crazy how the vicious cycle works. But I hope this was helpful, just thinking about capacity, expectations, and ultimately managing your how you feel when you think you're experiencing rejection. That's what I want to change your mindset around is, am I really being rejected right now? Or is their response just falling short of my expectations? So let me know your thoughts. Please subscribe, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I'm at melissa@gumballlove.com. My website is gumballlove.com, or you can follow me on Facebook, facebook.com/Coach Melissa Ledger. Instagram is the Melissa Ledger, THE Melissa, MELISSA LEGER. I think I just said that's Instagram. And then Snapchat is Melissa Ledger with a number 1. And I think I'm just Melissa Ledger on Twitter. So All right. Hopefully we covered everything. And until next time, I will see you soon. Bye-bye.